This is our first podcast. It was recorded on April 17, 2024, and my guest is the president of GemLabs, Ekkehard Ernst. GemLabs is a think and do tank, also known under the name of Geneva Macro Labs. We are a civil movement based in Geneva, where we apply ourselves to leverage the collective intelligence of our community to accelerate the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Ekkehard is one of the founders of GemLabs. In this podcast, I speak with him about where the idea to create GemLabs came from, Ekkehard's background and professional activities, how GemLabs contributes to making UN sustainable goals a reality, the funding challenges GemLabs is encountering, the complexities of impact project creation, the difficulty in finding implementation partners, and the necessity of local collaboration. We also talk about the conference GemLabs organized in 2022 on valuing natural capital, and how conversations with Konrad Seifert and Max Stauffer, respectively co-founder of Effective Altruism Switzerland and Effective Altruism Geneva, were instrumental in shaping up the initial GemLabs project. And now, our first podcast with Ekkehard Ernst. I'm really happy to welcome you, Ekkehard. I wanted to begin what I hope will be a long series of podcasts with you, since you are not only the president of Geneva Macro Labs, but also one of its founders. I think it will be simpler if I call Geneva Macro Labs GemLabs from now on. It doesn't just sound better, it's also the name of our website. Why don't you start by defining for our listeners what GemLabs is?
Yeah, well, thanks first, Gabor, for actually taking this initiative. I think it's a great idea to to have this podcast series, and I also agree with you. I hope that we can make this a long series with a lot of different interlocutors. Let me say the initial motivation behind Geneva Macro Labs, which actually started out as a lunchtime conversation with a friend of mine. On the need for bringing together different communities in Geneva. Geneva, as you know, is a small city, but has an enormous richness of different communities. Obviously, the international organizations are here, multinational companies, academia, finance, but obviously also all the highly educated Genevan population, if you want. And that goes beyond the city itself. It goes all the way along the lake area, which is, in a sense, an integrated intellectual hub. And so we felt the need that to bring together these different communities and have an ongoing exchange and conversation to enrich ourselves, enrich our discussions, and maybe also kind of help triggering new ideas that can come out of such a community. And so at the beginning, we really started out very small with different activities, mostly around lunchtime events. And as the community of Geneva Macro Labs grew, we kind of ventured out in all different types of projects. And I think that by now, almost 7 years later, we have reached some sort of steady state where we're trying to essentially not only bring together people, but federating them, mobilizing them around a shared vision to contribute concretely to make the UN Sustainable Development Goals a reality. And that means that essentially we want to not only have a discussion, not only bring out our own ideas, but also actually make them happen, implementing them through concrete projects, through impact initiatives that we either initiate ourselves or that we help develop together with partners outside. So over time, we not only grew our community here in Geneva, but we have managed to develop a whole network of different partners, whether they are scientific partners, whether they are impact partners, whether they're simple members that are based across the world. And we, as you know yourself, we have calls with people in Australia, in Singapore, in the US, in India. We also had participants in the past from Rwanda. So I think that, we actually have a really rich network of people that we bring together, and that, we develop co-design ideas to implement. So the idea, to summarize, is really this double pillars. If you have these two pillars of a think and a do tank. So we not only want to do the thinking, and in terms of collective intelligence, we also want to do the doing. We want to implement these ideas that we have.
It is fascinating to note the global reach of GemLabs events. As you mentioned, this absolutely speaks to Geneva's international character as a hub for international organizations, multinational corporations, and renowned research institutions. You mentioned the inspiration that was behind GemLabs. Before we delve into that, I'd be grateful if you could share a bit about your own background. Specifically, how did your professional journey lead you to become the president and founder of GemLabs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm an economist by training. I have worked mostly on macroeconomic issues, and a lot of issues relate to economic growth, productivity, jobs, income distribution, and earning stability. So that is, if you want my academic training, my day job is with the International Labour Organization, where I had a small team on macro policies and jobs, and where my responsibilities is to a large extent to write institutional reports that summarize somehow our research, our thinking on macro issues and how they relate to labor markets. But I think what really brought me to to start this initiative, Geneva Macro Labs, is the feeling that despite the fact that you obviously have an enormous visibility when you work for the United Nations, as an individual official, you're very far removed from concrete applications. Often these projects on the ground are done in collaboration, or often without our contribution, in different countries, in different regions. And even those colleagues of mine who work on these projects in the regions are not doing it themselves. They often do it through consultants or different business partners in their respective countries. And so what my feeling was always like, I wanted to actually not only sitting here in Geneva and thinking and developing great ideas, but really being actually concrete in terms of the impact and the change I can induce either myself or in collaboration with the community. And that's what motivated me in particular to start this initiative. And I should say to that is that we are really a community where everybody is encouraged and almost like being brought in as an active participant in this. So it's not only one person trying to steer this process. I'm just there because I facilitated the initial start of Geneva Macro Labs, but I really want to make sure that we as a community see each other as active members of these communities and trying to develop our own ideas. And which is why I think this idea that you have with this podcast is excellent, so that you are in charge of these podcasts, as we have others who are in charge of other initiatives. Yourself, we have these AI roundtables, we have afterwork events, we have different conferences, and we have impact projects on the ground that we develop with our partners. So it's really a community of like-minded people with similar motivations to bring change to the world.
Can you speak about the process that led you to launch the GemLabs project? How spontaneous was it? Can you recall anything about your high school or further academic studies that might have paved the way?
I don't know. I have to say that, looking backward is obviously, you always kind of tend to come up with a narrative on how your life developed. But then, if you're in front of these different options in your life, you're not necessarily thinking, what will I do in the next 30 years or so. I don't think that you can really identify what what motivated me in high school as being a trigger point where I end up now. I think what happened over time is that as I entered international organizations relatively early on after my academic studies, after I completed my academic studies, was really to kind of realize that my best role is as a catalyst, as an accelerator, as providing a platform for others. I don't think that, and at least that's how I see myself. I don't see myself as somebody who is necessarily getting the next Nobel Prize, or being at the frontier of policy or academic research. I think that's not how I see myself, and that's not where I think I should. My role is be where I best at. I think my contributions to Geneva Macro Labs is really that providing a space for exchange for what we call collective intelligence, and make sure that everybody finds his or her own place inside this community to contribute as actively as possible.
Now that we have a clearer picture of the origin of the project and how it's all begun, can you tell us about GemLab's structure and how you think it should evolve?
So I think one of the challenges that we have is, there's something that I came to realize, especially with our initiative Geneva Impacts, was the funding side. I think that as a community we work very well. We have great people on board, both in Geneva and internationally. We have always extremely educated attendance on all our different formats that we have proposed so far. And as I said, we have these after-work events, physical after-work events. We have roundtables now, which are hybrid. We organize conferences, both hybrid and online. So I think that we have a series of events, and all of them, if you look through them, you see that there's a high quality of content, high quality of contributions, and the reports that we produced are also very well received, and typically very highly recommended by those who have the chance to read them. So I think that in terms of what we produce, is that I don't think we should kind of shy away. I think for with the little resources that we have, at least the financial resources, we produce a lot of good content. But I think that the next step really contribute to create impact and to implement some of the projects that we have identified as relevant. I think we need more funding, and I realize that maybe we're in the wrong part of the world. Europe is not a place where where it's easy to get funding for these kind of risky projects, which are in a sense not risky because of the economic returns, but risky because we don't know whether the social returns are actually as high as we expect them. And so the funding issue has always been a problem. And so one thing where I would think that we should, as a community and as an association, maybe think about how we can change that, is to identify some more significant regular contributions to our budget, so that we actually can hire people permanently to help us develop our communication, our fundraising, our implementation. I think that's something which I think is lacking. I always say this in a sense, I call this the sustainability triangle. And what you need for sustainability projects is you need the right people, you need the right ideas, and you need the right funding. And I think we have the right people, we have the right ideas, we're lacking the funding. And that last element of that triangle is really something which is essential, and trying to find ways of solving that issue would, for me, be an important element going forward. Maybe something that we can have a discussion also at our next General Assembly. But in general, I think it's an ongoing discussion that we need to have, and maybe it's a structural issue that we need to identify, or maybe it's an issue of kind of being able to identify the right sources and the right doors to knock at.
Intuitively, how do you think GemLabs should go about securing funding?
Well, I think what we should do is, and this is coming to me telling after all these experiences I had in the last also 2 or 3 years or so, is that I think there's a lot of impact financing available. And I think that if we want to be able to tap into that private sector money, we need to create our own fund. We need to set up our own fund and would have a specific mandate to help implement the kind of projects that we develop and identify as a community. But that requires obviously a whole set of additional competencies that we might have in our community. I'm pretty sure we have it, but we need to put it together. And I think that's a kind of, that in itself is a risky activity, because obviously nobody guarantees you that we will be able to set up such a fund. But I think that setting up a fund to fund our activities and our projects would give us a lot of autonomy in not only identifying the right projects, but also in terms of implementing them and ensuring that they deliver to results. Because if you bring in grant money, you're always at the mercy of the grantee. So you're always at the mercy of those people who gives you the funding, and it might dry up quickly. You can get resources for maybe 2 or 3 years, and then that's it. And I think we have experienced that with our last funder, that if you don't deliver according to their own standards, you often end up in a very challenging situation. I think it's much better to have more autonomy in this respect, especially because we actually don't know what the right approach is for some of these impact projects. I mean, when you think some of the projects, for instance, around natural capital that we have been developing over the last few years, and it's not entirely clear what is a project that works and what doesn't. And the time horizon involved in, before you actually see both economic and social returns on some of these projects can be 5 to 10 years at least, which is way beyond what any grant giving organizations would allow you to.
You are speaking about private funding. Is that the best way to go? How would private funding versus public funding impact the autonomy and the independence of GemLabs?
Well, look, I mean, there are sustainability funds. We are not the first one to come up with that idea. And I think I would just kind of going with the same idea. There are venture capital funds that raise venture capital for impact projects, and the idea is really not by diversifying the sources from which you draw in your resources, to actually have the possibility to offer maybe a stronger returns, simply because you diversify also the projects that you invest in. So it's not. I mean, the thing is, if you have a grant, and if you get a grant for a particular project, that grant is for that particular project, and if you don't deliver, or if the delivery takes more time than you initially anticipated, that grant can run out and the project will stop halfway through. If you have a range of funds that come into a range of projects, you have a much higher chance, by diversifying both your sources and your projects, that actually these projects come through. And I mean, as I said, these would be venture capital type of funding, which is to say that there is in any case a problem that some of the funding will not receive any results.
Which model of past or current institutions inspires you, and why?
Oh, I don't think that this is built on any existing institution. I think it just grow over time like this. I mean, as you know, you were part of that conversation as well. So we developed a certain number of ideas. I think at the beginning, our focus was really on content creation, on impact project creation, and then as we grow these different projects, and as we grew also as we received some funding, then we started identifying also possible concrete actions. I think what's challenging with impact projects in general is that you often don't necessarily find the implementation partners that you need. So you often need to do it yourself. And I think that is something that was triggered our desire to say, well, we not only want to be those who deliver the ideas, we also want to be those who actually at least co-implement these ideas together with other partners. I give you one example, because that's what we are currently involved in, is a project with the indigenous population in New Zealand, the Maoris, who have developed a project on restoring and conserving their natural capital, their forest and rivers, and want to develop a fund, an impact fund that will help to generate sufficient resources to deliver on these restoration and conservation projects. So our role in this is really specifically looking into the monitoring of the social side of this. So we don't want to have projects or green natural capital projects that are only delivering on ecological objectives, but they also have to respond to social objectives. And our role is as a junior partner in that particular project in particular is to look into the social side. But ideally, we want to have this type of projects to develop with others. And clearly, Geneva Macro Labs cannot deliver on the technological side simply because we don't have the technological developers, and it certainly cannot develop on the financial side because you need financial institutions behind that. But what we can do is we can, again, as in the sense of a platform, we can bring together these different partners. We can identify who we need to bring on board, and we can help local communities to develop these type of projects to their benefit. And I think that's kind of how I see, the evolution. I don't think that there's any ideal type that exists like this. I mean, other institutions try to do the same. The UN has a SDG lab where they're trying to do the same top down. But without necessarily the implementation part, because that's always where the trick is. The trick is really kind of how do you actually make this concretely happen on the ground? With whom do you partner? With what company? With what kind of community? With what type of local actor, public or private? And I think that that's something that you cannot do top down out of Geneva from a large public organization. You have to do it together with local partners. And I think our platform approach in Geneva Macro Labs is really what is kind of behind the idea, and where I think we are almost like a forerunner in this type of front runner in this type of projects or approaches.
This project in New Zealand certainly sounds interesting and exciting. Where could our listeners find out more about it? Could we direct them to any website, for instance?
Oh, there is not a particular website that you can look it up. I mean, I can give you some names. So Mere Takoko is the vice president of this project, and if you look at her up on LinkedIn, I can provide you with the link. You can see all the type of different activities she is involved in, and she is really the leading voice, the spokesperson for that project. I think that she's the best person to follow up on this. But this project is evolving, and a lot of it is obviously still confidential, simply because some of the negotiations are ongoing. But you can get already a sense of what this is about. I mean, I think it's actually your point. To your point, it would be interesting to see to what extent we can also release some more information on the project through our website, and maybe something that to discuss with them. As I said, we are junior partner to this project, so it's not up to us to decide what the best communication strategy would be. But I can tell you that there are similar projects like hers, where we have been involved in. We actually did an event in 2020, just before the pandemic hit, as a side event at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where we showcased some other projects similar to what Mere is doing in New Zealand, in Brazil, and elsewhere. I think that these kind of projects can give a sense of what is potentially out there, and how we as Geneva Macro Labs can build around these projects to kind of create a community that helps to accelerate some of these impact projects.
Probably the best way to find out about the activities of GemLabs, such as this New Zealand project, is to visit our website. We are updating it regularly, and it is where you listeners can find relevant information about our activities and ongoing projects. Ekkehard, I was wondering how your activities with GemLabs has impacted your professional aspirations.
Well, I mean, I think that especially the work on natural capital is something that I now have included also as part of my work stream at the ILO. I mean, I haven't really worked on ecological or green transitions here at the ILO so much, but I mean, I've increasingly introduced it, and I think that there's a strong interest as well on the ILO side in trying to bring this forward. We have published, I think 2 years ago, a report on payment for ecosystem services as one element of the green transition. And as the ILO, if we are always very keen on looking at the social side of it, obviously. So what the ILO calls just transition is exactly that, is the idea to combine ecological transition with the capacity, the possibility for everybody, men and women, to benefit from this type of transitions towards better jobs, more stable jobs which command higher incomes, etc. So that transition that involves also not only an ecological adjustment of economies but also a social adjustment, I think is very important for ILO. And in a sense, the fact that I work on this as part of Geneva Macro Labs has certainly contributed also to my work at the ILO.
GemLabs aspires to be thought-provoking. Talk to me about the importance of being more than thought-provoking locally to becoming influential beyond and even globally.
Well, I mean, I think that as an individual, I mean, unless you are really one of the global top leaders, intellectual leaders, I think it's very hard to kind of believe that oneself is part of that global change. But I think we are part of a community of like-minded people that share some ideas, share some values, and share some approaches of how to implement these ideas to cater to these values. I think that's an important part. And so from my ambition is to kind of be part of that community, being a spokesperson maybe in our part of the world as well for these approaches. I can tell you that natural capital and payment for ecosystem services is not something which has been high on the agenda of environmental movements and the ILO. So I think that bringing this to the table here in this conversation at the ILO has also been a positive contribution to change. But again, I'm part of a community. It's not because I raised my voice that things have changed.
It is not exactly a process anybody can claim control over. I find very appealing the idea that GemLabs could sometimes initiate a chain reaction and sometimes act as an echo chamber or amplifier.
Exactly.
GemLabs has tackled a great variety of issues.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
one or which ones are dearest to your heart?
Well, I'm very active in around this issue on natural capital. So I mean, this was really something which one of our advisory board members, Ralph Shami, inspired me to this, and I think that's something which I mean, I discovered it myself, the potential for that. Actually, I mean, I have to say that the concrete applications on using new digital technologies to implement these natural capital projects was something that came out of a conversation that Geneva Macro Labs hosted 2019 in a completely different context where we looked into blockchain applications. And as part of that conference, we invited several people, including him, but also others, and identified strong overlap and strong connectivity between very different approaches, technological and institutional, to implement such a or to kind of accelerate such a project. So I think that was really something where I said that Geneva Macro Labs for myself helped to kind of open my own thinking around issues that I hadn't thought about. And I don't know about others, but I mean, for me, that particular conference was really an eye-opener for the potential of some of these what they call cross-pollination or cross-fertilization. So yeah, and I think that, again, this approaches of bringing together a diverse community with very different ideas and maybe shared values, but very different ideas on how to reach them is something that I really inspired me a lot. We do have other projects which I also find interesting, and we collaborate a lot on AI, on digital transformation, broadly speaking. As you know, we have now a new roundtable series where Sergio is in the lead, so he's doing a great job there as well. And I think these are interesting things, but this is part of my day job, so I'm maybe less excited about them and more excited about something where I can learn something new.
So coming out of COVID, the conference we organized in 2022 was a great success. This year, we're opening the door to follow up, and we are hoping that some students will want to join us in exploring different aspects of how the notion of valuing natural capital is being tackled around the world. So to our student listeners, if you want to join us, we have great internship opportunities. The students' contribution would be a great opportunity to help take what we've invested in for the 2022 conference further.
Absolutely, and I think that's the way forward. We need to kind of now, as I said, I think that we have a lot of content, and I think now it's the time to kind of implement this content through concrete action. And as you said, this great collaboration that we have with IMD and hopefully also with the University of Geneva, it will help us to reach out to young people who are active and trying to implement some of these projects, and there can be similar ideas, but in totally different contexts that we haven't even thought about. That can be even in a local context here in Switzerland, where these type of projects might actually have a better chance to be implemented quickly because of the institutional framework that's available. But I mean, I think talking about young people and students, I think our ambition increasingly has been to make sure that we bring in new ideas through younger generations. We did collaborate actually for the conference that you mentioned with a lot of young people that came through us with through different channels. And as part of that project that I mentioned with New Zealand, we also have on board some of the students from the University of Exeter who will help us now to implement this project or the employment assessment, if you want, of that project in New Zealand as well. So I think it's important indeed to also think generationally. Yeah, I mean, this is not only an association for 50-year plus people, but really it's a generational encompassing activity, and we want to have thought leaderships across all different age groups, simply because we do believe that younger people, maybe they don't have the experience, but they have great ideas that we should listen to and hopefully accelerate.
Collective intelligence, as you noted, Ekkehard, is very dear to GemLab's hearts, and the students provide essential and meaningful contributions. And obviously, younger generations look at issues from a different perspective. So their participation, their contribution is essential to move forward. When GemLabs started, which topic did you think would be discussed and never has been so far?
That's actually a challenging question. I don't remember what we discussed at the time. But I think let's put it this way: the initial ambition was really to kind of cater to the entire agenda of the Sustainability Development Goals, which, as you know, encompasses 16 plus 1 items. I don't think that we have managed to really kind of cater to the entire agenda. I mean, obviously, climate change and ecological conservation is very important, so that already covers a lot. But for instance, one thing that we haven't talked about is much is about education and about gender equality. That hasn't been enough on the agenda of Geneva Macro Labs, simply because this would open up a whole new area of topics that for the moment we simply don't have the resources for. And then I think something that is would be very interesting to discuss more broadly, and simply because it kind of fits both mainstreams of work that we do, AI and climate change, is everything related to responsible consumption and waste management, if you want. So waste management, circular economy, etc. I think that that's something which we you should really kind of look more carefully in, because it's something that I do believe we have the right tools to relatively quickly come up with some ideas. Actually, I should say to that one of the impact projects that we had as identified as part of that impact cycles in 2020 to 2022 was on on responsible consumption in the garment industry, textiles. So I think that there are actually projects that we had identified as possible follow-up, but again, for lack of funding, we didn't really power through. And I think that's something that we should, kind of take a closer look at it going forward, identifying maybe also the right people to bring in, and obviously the right resources for them.
You brought up the topic of gender issues, which can be quite polarizing. So far, the conversation and the events GemLabs organized were not that polarizing, and different perspectives could participate in respectful exchanges. How do you think that very polarizing issues, such as maybe the one you mentioned, could affect GemLabs? Is there a danger of some sort of decredibilization if people embracing radically different perspectives are confronted with others more moderate? How do you see that?
I think for me it's a question of how to frame these issues, and I think you can frame any issue in a polarizing and in a consensual way. I mean, when it comes to gender equality, one thing I always say is that we lose out enormously by preventing half of the population from not taking their not being able to realize their full potential. And you can see that in a very simple economic effect. We did some calculations at the time at the ILO, and as you know yourself, there are some parts on the world where female participation rates are extremely low for economic, for social, for cultural reasons. If you add if you just remove some of the barriers to allow women to participate at the global average, we are not talking even at the level of total equality, but at the global level, global average, you would increase their economic potential by 30-40%, which is a massive amount of additional resources that would be available, for improved livelihoods, for improved medical standards, for improved education, etc. And I think that not realizing that potential is a huge loss for everybody, not only for the women, for everybody. And I think that's how I would frame this issue. The other example I always give is we have in advanced economies now reached a point where young women at least have almost the same level of educational attainment or even higher than men. And yet we think it's totally normal for women to drop out of the labor market or work part-time once they get their first child. That is a massive waste of resources for no good reason. There are solutions to that, and we know these solutions work, but we don't want to implement them. Partly because of stereotypes, partly because of slow institutional developments, etc. So I think that, why don't we offer everybody in our societies the same potential to realize, or the same opportunities to realize their potential? And I think that, again, the solutions are there. It's not that we need to find new solutions for it. The thing is the implementation, and the question really is for me to frame it in a way that it's encompassing and consensual, not polarizing.
Well, it seems to me that gender equality issues tend to produce less polarizing conversations here than maybe in the Anglo-Saxon world, such as the United States or the UK. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, but I don't. I think no. I mean, I disagree with you in the sense that I think even the question of equal participation has been highly polarizing in some parts of the world. Huh? So I don't think that this is really an issue just specific to Anglo-Saxon countries. I would stay away from those issues that make it polarizing. I mean, that there are obviously and it's for me it's a framing issue. It's not so much an issue of the substantive part of the problem is, I don't think, so much an issue. It's the way it's being framed, and it's being framed as in economics we call this zero-sum games. One lose whatever one gains, the other person loses, and I don't think that's true. I don't think that, especially, and it's not true. It's not true when it comes to gender issues. It's not true for many other issues, including climate change also has been a highly contentious issue. But again, I don't think it's true. I think it's the way we frame it. It makes it polarizing. But it's not necessarily the case. You can frame the same issue in a consensual way that creates adherence and salience for large groups of the population. And I think, in a sense, I always try to, at Geneva Macro Labs, to insist on this. I think that we should stay away of the polarizing way of framing issues and try to make sure that we create adherence to our idea of collective intelligence, because only if people have some shared values and shared understanding of the problem that they will develop joint solutions.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. I can only hope that those issues that are important and part of the Sustainable Development Goals will find their way into our future activities. We looked at how GemLabs managed so far. You suggested how we should be approaching different issues and the benefits funding would provide. What is needed for GemLabs to be sustainable? And how do you see it evolving in 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, I mean, at the very least, I would hope that we continue with the same level of activities that we have now, which is to say, one conference every 1 to 2 years, regular after-work events, regular technical events, whether these are roundtables or webinars, and so kind of continue building up our community. I think it's interesting to observe that we get often, approached by people who are very far away, physically, geographically, very far away from us, and yet kind of come across our activities and find us interesting. Just this morning, as you know, we had a conversation with a startupper from Australia. We also have now somebody from actually again from Australia and Singapore on our advisory board. So I think that building slowly this community, and that does require time, simply because we all have our full-time jobs. Ideally, we were fortunate enough at some point to find the resources that will allow us to kind of enhance our activities. I think that we are all working on this hard to identify these people or these resources, but it involves also a bit of luck sometimes. Meeting the right people, making sure that you create a shared understanding of what you want to achieve with an outside investor. That I think would be good. And as I said, I mean, this is something that we all strive to work on. So I know that I just had the conversation earlier with Daniel about this. He is in the same boat. As soon as we can identify such resources, there would be a massive acceleration in our own activities. I think we are ready to go. I think we have everything that we need. But for the moment, we just need that right amount of funding to get us started.
Great. So before concluding our conversation, I have to ask you if there are things that we haven't covered about GemLabs' development or how it came about and that you would like to add now.
No, I mean, I think the only thing I would like to add is really that call for active participation. As I said, I mean, we are a community that lives off collective intelligence. That means that we not only come together on regular events, but we really live off the the willingness and the capacity of each one of us to contribute actively to our community. It's not a tennis club where you come together and every 2 weeks you play with a tennis partner. It's really an association that actively seeks input from people. That is sometimes challenging because it requires actually your time, your resources, your mental resources as well to be available for us. And I know that not everybody has the capacity to do that on a regular basis. I respect that, but I think that we really want to request or seek the input from each one of us. And for me, it's an important, not so much a missing element, but a call to repeatedly think about this, that we all have some shared values. We all are in this endeavor because we wanted to be in this association. And I think that being able to contribute to such a goal might be a reward in itself, despite the fact that it is challenging and it requires a lot of resources.
And are there names of people who were at the initial phase of the creation of GemLabs that you would like to mention before we conclude?
Well, I mean, so we had actually at the very beginning a discussion with Max and Konrad from Effective Altruism here in Geneva, and I think that the very first exchange, and actually the name Geneva Macro Labs came out of conversation I had with the two of them. So I mean, I wanted to thank them here, maybe also for their contribution to that initial phase. I think the idea of creating an acceleration platform is very much linked to what Effective Altruism also tried on their end. We lost touch in the meantime for very different reasons, and I think that we didn't lose touch because we didn't like each other anymore, simply because we had different objectives for our different ventures. But I would say that for me, this original idea of the labs project, as a concrete collaboration space, I think is something that owes a lot to their input as well, which I would like to recognize.
Thank you very much, Ekkehard. I think that our listeners now will have a clear understanding of where Geneva Macro Labs comes from, maybe where it's heading, but we've discussed what we're doing, and hope that the way we discussed it will trigger some of our listeners to participate and join in. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gabor, for the opportunity. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks.